Second thing, and I know many of you have had a chance to visit with since I've been senator, and you're going to say, oh, Mark, don't start on this again. But if we don't get our fiscal house in order, shame on us. You know, the greatest threat to our country is what the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mullins, said it wasn't some external threat. It's this question of our national debt. We're $17 trillion in debt. You know, it goes up almost $3 billion a night. That's a lot of money, even if your friend Noel. Pretty rich, not that rich. You know, and you remember back last year when maybe one of the stupidest things that I've seen our government do happened when we shut down the government. Yeah. Kind of like, you know, what could we do more to hurt Virginia? Yeah. Well, the reason we shut down the government was because we couldn't get a big budget deal. We got a budget deal for 2 years. Well, guess what, folks? That deal runs out in October of 2015. When this whole battle about the budget starts again is right after November. So, if we're going to get our fiscal house in order, if we're going to make sure that we continue to make the investments in America that we need to do, because right now we're on a path where the things that get first cut will be things like education, infrastructure, research, which are actually things you got to do to grow your jobs.
Right.
It's going to mean both parties are going to have to give a little bit. It means many of us who are in the room are Democrats are going to have to be willing to move forward now on entitlement reform. You know, Medicare and Social Security are two of the best programs any government's ever created. That's right. But the problem is, man, we got to make sure that they're going to be here 20 years from now. You know, and that means, by delaying starting those reforms, because we are all blessed now to live a lot longer. But it doesn't mean the math doesn't work as much as it used to. When I was a young person, there were 16 people paying in the Social Security and Medicare for every one person that was retired. Now there are only 3 people paying in for every one person who's retired. In 15 years, it's down to 2 people paying in. That's not anybody's fault, except for maybe the doctors. That was a joke. Because we are living longer. But it does mean we got to be willing to say we got to start changing it. And it means the Republic's going to have to give on tax reform. We couldn't create a more complicated tax code than we've got right now. That means we need to make it simpler, and we need to be willing to start paying down some of this debt so we can still have a country that can do great things. You know, one little, again, piece of thing that I think will help us on that is another bill that I got passed just recently. The President signed it about 2 months ago. And it's called the Data Act. And I don't want to kind of get wonky here for a minute. And, you know, some of you will be aghast at who my partner was. But don't throw anything at me. My partner on this one was Daryl Ison. I know so much for him. Here's what it basically says. Is, you know, it's been called, though, before you got off, it's been called the biggest step towards government transparency since the Freedom of Information Act. Because as I've kind of, you know, I'm a little bit of a budget nerd, and remember when I was governor of Virginia, we actually did get our budget fixed. And, you know, came in with a shortfall, turned it over to the next guy with $1 billion surplus. But trying to figure that out at the federal level, and it's crazy. There are 200 separate financial accounting systems just inside the Department of Defense. Federal government, the way there are no common standards. If you want to try to find ways to save money, you got to at least have common financial standards. It's like if you're a baseball fan, it'd be like if every baseball team could decide how they want to determine what counts as a hit, what counts as an error, what counts as a stolen base, what counts as a home run. If they could all make up their own statistics, well, how in the heck would you compare who's good and who's not good? Well, that's what we've got in the federal government. So the Data Act says, You got to start consolidating financial systems, and at the end of the day, you ought to be able to Google your tax dollar and find it all the way down to where it ends up getting spent. And the reason why this is important is because, you know, we are going to have to find ways to economize and streamline. Classic place is workforce training. We got 47 different workforce training programs out of the federal government. That's too many. We actually, again, have got, so it's not like we're not doing nothing up there all the time. We've actually got a bill right now, bipartisan, House and Senate working on, that will eliminate, not take down the top line number, because you need to have that training, but would eliminate about a third of those programs and try to give the states a little more flexibility. What works in the Valley is going to be different than what works in New York City. And we ought to reward the programs that actually